Hello and welcome to another edition of Only in Illinois, your weekly video recap from Reboot Illinois. I'm Madeleine Doubek here with Matt Dietrich, and this week we want to talk about the wrap-up from our first week of full polling, and we ended with a look at what the voters think about things in Illinois, and there were some pretty fascinating results. Right off the bat we have cutting taxes, polling even more support, stronger support than Jesse White, who was the candidate among our statewide officers who got the most support.
Right, Jesse White had 62% in our poll on the Secretary of State's race.
Cutting taxes.
Letting the income tax rate fall from 5% to 3.75% had 65%.
Yes, and it cuts across every region of the state, every demographic group, even Democrats. Nearly half of Democrats said they wanted to see the rate drop to 3.75%. So that was pretty strong consensus there, and I guess that explains why there wasn't a tax increase in this spring session.
Right.
I'm sure the politicians are aware of the sentiment out there.
Right, they didn't want to touch that before going into the November elections.
Yeah.
Now, it's not really a big surprise that we would get this response from voters, because we've heard this over and over again, that they're never in favor of a tax increase. They like to cut taxes, but they do not like to see anything that is important to them cut to make up for the tax cuts.
Right, and we saw that as well in this poll. We found that we asked people what they would cut, and the most popular response was public pensions. But the only other thing that showed strong support for cutting was natural resources, which I guess would mean closing our state parks.
And that's not going to bring in the kind of savings that you're looking for.
Not billions of dollars.
And what the poll respondents said overwhelmingly was, don't cut from school funding.
Right.
Don't cut aid to the elderly. Don't cut aid to the poor, and don't cut public safety funding.
Not a whole lot left after all.
Something is going to have to give, though, if you want to have a tax decrease that is going to cut in the next fiscal year roughly $1.8 billion out of the budget, and in years beyond that it's going to double. If you're going to take away that much revenue, you've either got to cut that much, or you've got to come up with money coming in from elsewhere. Well, our poll respondents were not in favor of expanding sales taxes or doing other tax-related things. They were not very crazy about gambling either.
No, they weren't, yeah.
And so you kind of have this imbalance here, and it just shows that there are going to be some very hard choices to make that are not going to make voters happy.
No, pain all around, and difficult choices.
Correct.
We also took a look at, we mentioned Jesse White, we took a look at all of the statewide races, and this past week took a look at some that haven't gotten a whole lot of attention yet, kind of set the bar for the rest of the way here. And it looks like, well, tell us about the Attorney General's race.
The Attorney General's race is one where Lisa Madigan is kind of considered to be the undefeatable candidate, even though there is no such thing as the undefeatable candidate. But nobody wanted to challenge her. And there was for a long time rumors that Tom Cross would run for Attorney General,
right,
if Lisa Madigan ran for governor. She polled very well, but not everyone read that as being a huge margin for someone who is a three-time incumbent and who has this reputation as being unbeatable. And
she and her father have had kind of a rough year.
And some of the prevailing wisdom is that the beating that her father, House Speaker Michael Madigan, has taken in the press over the past year has rubbed off a little bit on the Madigan name and was affecting her poll numbers. Now, if you look back to 2010, she had poll numbers later in the fall of 2010 in the 60 percentile range, and she ended up winning with 64% of the vote.
Really, we also took a look at the comptroller's race. Judy Bartopinka is the incumbent. She's a Republican. She is being challenged by the current Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Simon, the daughter of Paul Simon, and the incumbent is polling a little bit ahead there, but looks to be a competitive race at this point. Certainly they both have strong name recognition, so we'll see what happens there. And then you mentioned Tom Cross. He ended up running for treasurer.
Correct.
He's a state representative and a Republican. Tom Cross is running against Mike Frericks, who's a state senator and the Democratic nominee.
Tom Cross has the advantage here of having been, for a little bit more than a decade, the House Republican leader. So he's got quite a bit higher statewide profile. He's been in the press quite a bit over those 10 years. So that reflected probably somewhat in his higher numbers.
Lots of competitive races. This is the time really when we all should start paying more attention to some of these races we've mentioned today that don't always get a whole lot of attention. We'll certainly be trying to provide you with more information in the weeks and months ahead and do some more polling along the way, I'm sure. But this was a good eye-opener, I think, for all of us, and learned a lot of things and helped us understand why some things have happened the way they have. So we'll look forward to more. We hope you will too, and we'll see you on the next edition of Only in Illinois.